Today we're going to go through this hadith, inshaAllah ta'ala. Let's go back to this hadith. The hadith tells us that the Christians are how many? Sorry, the Jews are how many groups? 71. The Christians? 72. The Muslims? So who is the least? The Jews. Who's in the middle? The Christians. Who's the most? That's what the hadith. So the first benefit that we take from the hadith is that the disunity and the furqa and the iftiraq is more in the Muslims than who? The Christians and the Jews. Are we all together, brothers? The second benefit we can look at the hadith is this number that my ummah is going to be divided into 73 groups, is this halil adadu huwa al-maqsood? Is the number what the Prophet intended? Did he intend by literally it's 73 best? Or did he mean by this, it's a law? Why would this question arise? Why would this even be a question? The reason why it's a question is because if we look at the Quran and the Sunnah, we find sometimes the Prophet would mention a number and the number is intended. Like, Buniya al-Islamu ala khamsin. Islam is built on what? 5 pillars. This 5 is intended. How? Because after it, the Prophet explains it by mentioning each of those 5. Sah? Am I making sense? No? Yes? So the 5 here is intended. But we have another place where number is mentioned, but it's not intended. Istaghfir lahum, aw la tastaghfir lahum, in tastaghfir lahum, 70 marra, falan yaghfir Allahu lahum. 70 marra here, this number is not intended. Ask forgiveness for them, or don't ask forgiveness for them, or ask forgiveness for them 70 times, Allah will not accept it from you, Muhammad, if you make it for them. If the Prophet makes it 71, would Allah accept it? No. What about 72? Allah won't accept it. The number here is not meant. The number here, istaghfir lahum aw la tastaghfir lahum in tastaghfir lahum 70 marra. The number here is however much you ask forgiveness for them. That's what the ayah is saying. Allah will not accept your dua for them. Does that make sense? So we are here, in one situation the number is actually intended. And in another situation the number is not intended. Are we all together, brothers? So this hadithul iftiraq, which one does it fall under? Does that make sense now? Is the 73 or the 72 or the 71 that it mentions, is it intended? That which seems apparent, wal ilmu inda Allah, is that the numbers are not intended. The numbers are not intended. It just means that the number of Muslim iftiraq is more than the Christians and the Jews. And the Christians are more than the Jews. But the number 73 is not intended. وَلِذَلِكَ, if you look at the books of Al-Bilal wal-Nihal, like Al-Shahrastani and Al-Baghdadi's kitab, حتى Al-Imam Ibn Hazm, Abu Muhammad Ibn Hazm has a kitab called Al-Fisalu fil Bilal wal-Ahwa'i wal-Nihal. He mentions those numbers, and what they try to do is they try to mention all of the groups that came from the time of the Prophet until today, and they try to fit it into 73. Are we all together? And there was no need for that. There was what? No need, because the number is not intended. Does that make sense, brothers? And I'm going to come back to it later, inshallah ta'ala, and discuss it a bit more. But Al-Imam Abdullah ibn Mubarak and others, Ahmad ibn Hanbal and others mention this, that the groups that deviated, okay, from the path of the Prophet ﷺ go back to 5. If you want to write it down. They all go back to 5. You can squeeze them all, any group that's going to come now, you can squeeze it into one of these 5 groups. Or they can be more than one group that they've taken from. They've taken parts of this one from this one, parts from this, parts from this. But it goes back to one of those 5. The first of them is the Khawarij. And this is in the chronological order. Meaning, I mention it to you, one, how it came chronologically. The first is the Khawarij. The second are the Shia and the Rafidah. The third is Al-Qadariyah. So the first was Khawarij, Shia and the Rafidah. The third one is what? Yeah, the Qadariyah. The fourth is the Murji'ah. The fourth is what? The Murji'ah. And the fifth is the Sufiyah. The Sufiyah. The fifth. Those 5 groups are what you would remember as Usulul Firaq. Usulul Firaq is these 5. Ibn Taymiyyah mentions it. Abu Ishaq al-Shatibi mentions it. Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali mentions it. Ibn Taymiyyah mentions it. Mullah Ali Qari mentions it. Many scholars mention it from different backgrounds. And Abdullah ibn Mubarak mentioned it from the Salaf, and there was Aimah to Salaf who mentioned this. And inshallah, I'm going to speak about those groups, inshallah ta'ala, and discuss them later. Another benefit that we take from the hadith of Iftiraq, is that these groups, all of them, the hadith mentions they're going to be in the hellfire. The hadith says, كلها في النار. All of them are in the hellfire. The question here is, are they all disbelievers? So the 5, are they disbelievers or are they Muslims? They are what? They are Muslims. So كلها في النار, all of them are in the hellfire, is like what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, okay, for those who commit major sins. Are we all together? Muslims who commit major sins are what? The hellfire, there can be consequences for them. صح? If a person commits zina, or if a person kills another person, or if a person steals, and etc. The list goes on. This is what? An act that, if you don't repent from it, it will put you into what? It could put you into the hellfire. It could. So, kulluha fi nari here does not mean that they're disbelievers. These groups are Muslims. They're not what? They're not kuffar. That's important to remember. Another benefit that we take from the hadith, but even then, as Muslims should be scared. If the Prophet tells you you're going to be in the hellfire if you do this, then you should be scared and say, I don't want to be from the people who go to the hellfire. Which is what this separates us, brothers, here from the Christians. Huh? The Christians, they believe, if you believe in the Trinity and you believe this and you believe that, then you are, don't worry, relax, sleep. Don't worry, you're going to go to paradise. Huh? Are we all together, brothers? Like as Muslims, we believe that you can be a Muslim and still end up in the hellfire. So that means you have to work hard. You have to exert so much effort in. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah forgives us for our mistakes and our shortcomings. I ask Allah tabarak wa ta'ala that He doesn't expose us the day of judgment. And I ask Allah tabarak wa ta'ala He bestows His mercy onto each and every one of us. We are in need of that. So the hadith mentions that to us. Another benefit that we take from the hadith is the group that's saved is only one. That group is only one. Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 4? It's only one group. Is this intended, this number now? Is this number 1? You said the 73 and the 72 and 71 are not intended. It could be more than that. But here, the one that the Prophet mentioned, is that number intended or is it not? Yeah? Yes, it's intended. But ترجيح بغير مرجح يسمى التحكم. Strengthening an opinion without really giving evidence, that's called dictatorship. Is it not, brothers? dictatorship. If I say this view is the strongest view and I don't give a reason, I don't explain why, I don't bring my proofs forward, it means I'm a dictator. I'm just saying what I want and everybody needs to follow. So what's our reason for saying, here we said it's not, the number is not intended, and here we're saying here is intended. Yeah? Huh? Yes. Yes. It's like Bunya al-Islamu ala khamsin, Islam is built on 5. Right after the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the 5, right? So we know the number is intended. Because the Prophet mentioned the testimony of La ilaha illallah, the salah, the zakat, the sawm and the hajj. When we counted it, we're like, yep, the number is intended. Here's the same thing. What? The Prophet mentioned only one quality that they have, which is man kana ala mithli ma ana alayhi al-yawma wa ashabi. Who this group, this one group, is upon that which I and my companions are upon. So it can't be a group that doesn't have that quality. Does that make sense, brothers? So that number 1 is intended. Some of the scholars try to say it's more than one. They put different groups in there. They said the Ahlul Hadith, for example, the Asha'ira, the Maturidiyya, all of them are in here. From them is Al-Imam Safarini rahimahullah. That's what he said. But what we say is, the Hadith is 1, and the quality for those people is that they go back to the Quran and the Sunnah and that which the Sahabas were upon. Simple as. If they do that, they are from, inshaAllah ta'ala, that group. Does that make sense, brothers? Now what I want to do, inshaAllah ta'ala, is I want to go through a little bit about these 5 groups and some of the reasons they went astray. And then, inshaAllah ta'ala, I want to go through who are Ahlus Sunnah. Because remember, once we know who these people are and where they deviated, if we go back to what's left is what was a safe group. But some of you may feel that this information is so much, it's kind of confusing me. I may not understand everything, so I'll just give you one benefit to remember. The clearest quality that Ahlus Sunnati wal Jama'ah have is that they don't fall into extreme exaggeration and extreme negligence. There is 2 extremes. There are what? 2 extremes. And Allah mentions those 2 extremes in the ayah, يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ لَا تَغْلُوا فِي دِينِكُمْ وَلَا تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ غَيْرَ الْحَقِّ. The people of the scripture, don't go overboard. The ghulu, extreme in the religion of Islam, is going extreme in exaggeration and going extreme in what? Negligence. Does that make sense? An extreme exaggeration is a person who says, if you drink khamar, you're a kafir. That's extreme exaggeration. And extreme negligence would be, what's the problem in drinking alcohol? That's extreme negligence. Those 2 in our religion, we say you're extremist and you're an extremist. And all of those 5 groups have that in common. They're either going to be extreme in exaggerating in some aspects, or they are going to be extreme in negligence. Negligence in some aspects of the religion. And the one thing that Ahlus Sunnah had from the day until today, inshaAllah ta'ala, is they always stayed in the middle path. And that middle path is not extreme exaggeration and not extreme negligence. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. They were in that what? That middle path. Give you another example. 5 times a day you pray, right? Minimum. I don't want to say you only pray 5 times. You should be praying more than that. But minimum, you pray 5 times a day, right? And in that prayer that you pray 5 times a day, there's a surah that you have to read every single rak'ah. Which surah is that? Surah Al-Fatiha. So 5, every rak'ah, 17 times, at least, minimum, you read Fatiha. True or false? Huh? 17 times a day, minimum. If you pray your, mashallah, witr and you pray your sunan and you pray your qiyamul layl, that's more than that. But at least, minimum, you should be reading how many times Surah Al-Fatiha? 17 times. What is it that you ask in Surah Al-Fatiha? At the ending, hey? Oh Allah, guide us to the straight path. So this straight path, what is it? It mentions to us right in the surah, same ayah. It's a path that opposes the path of what? غير المغضوب عليهم and الضالين. Hadith Adi ibn Hatim, the Prophet, done tafsir of this verse. Nabi Muhammad did tafsir of this verse. And do you know what he said? He said, مغضوب عليهم is the Yahud. ضالين is the what? Nasara. What did the Jews do to Isa ibn Maryam? The Jews. What was their view regarding Isa ibn Maryam? Extreme exaggeration. They killed him, according to themselves. But we know that they didn't kill him. Sah? Sorry, extreme negligence. That's what they fall into. The haqq that he had, which is he was a Nabi. What did they do to him? They put him below that level. They dragged him down and said, he's nothing, he's not a prophet. And the Nasara, what did they do with Isa ibn Maryam? Extreme exaggeration. They said, no, he's not just a prophet. He is himself ilah. فَعَبَدُوهُ, they worshipped him. So when we say, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم, we're saying to Allah, the path you put us on, do not let it be extreme exaggeration, extreme negligence. Does that make sense, brothers? Does that make sense? The beauty of Ahlul Sunnah is they're always like that. They're not extreme in exaggeration, they're not extreme in negligence. So remember, inshallah ta'ala, in this whole lecture, if you do not understand when we talk about each of these groups, okay, if you don't understand what the problems with them is, just keep remembering that they either fell into extreme exaggeration or extreme negligence. And that Ahlul Sunnah was always in the what? Middle. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us from the people of the Sunnah. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He keeps us firm upon this religion. إِنَّهُ وَلِيُّ ذَلِكَ وَالْقَادِرُ عَلَيْهِ. And may Allah forgive us for our mistakes and our shortcomings.